Inc.com.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Well, this is a development. New York Times columnist Tom Friedman was able to tear himself away from coming up with new uses for Flintstones metaphors and actually scrawl something semi-coherent on immigration policy. Tom Friedman, who does not like Trump, does not believe in Trump, but agrees with him on addressing the crisis at the border. And part of addressing it is a high wall with a big, smart gate, or a big, smart door, I should say. That's what Friedman offered.
We have a real immigration crisis, and that the solution is a high wall with a big gate, but a smart gate. So you're talking about a wall. You want a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, a high wall with what you call a smart gate.
A big gate, a smart gate, and a compassionate gate, I said. Wolf, I'm as radically pro-immigration as they come. But it's pretty clear to me that unless we can assure a significant number of Americans that we can control our border, we're never going to have the proper immigration flow I think we need, we desire, and that we have actually a moral responsibility, given our history as a nation of immigrants and a refuge for people fleeing persecution. I think the only way is a compromise on this. The tragedy, and that's why my column was said Trump is wasting this crisis. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. We have a president who actually, when you think about it, Wolf, he has the chops with his base. If he were to sit down, call Nancy Pelosi up, say, we're going up to Camp David, you bring your immigration team, I'll bring mine, I'll leave Stephen Miller at home, and we will actually sort out a compromise here where, because Democrats were ready to fund more border security, but at the same time, we're going to create a legal pathway for people here. We're going to limit the number of ICE arrests, and we're going to have a rational inflow of people, of the kind of people that are both high energy, high IQ, that can actually drive our country forward. We need a compromise.
Well, for more on this topic and many others, we're pleased to be joined by Utah Senator Mike Lee, making his first appearance on our show. We're happy to have him. He has got a new book out, Our Lost Declaration, America's Fight Against Tyranny from King George to the Deep State. Senator Lee, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Why don't we start with what Tom Friedman had to say? It's too bad he's not the Speaker of the House. He sounds like he's a little bit, there's a little bit of wishful thinking in terms of Democrats' indication that they're willing to fund border security, but he strikes the right note when he talks about the need for a compromise, doesn't he?
Sure. And, I don't always agree with him, but I appreciate the fact that he is signaling the need for some legitimate discussions. I wonder whether he might be sort of softening the ground for this to happen. I think some of my Democratic colleagues and counterparts in the House might be recognizing the fact that this can no longer be a left versus right issue. We've got a real crisis at the border. That crisis is having vast ramifications for people not only who live along the border, but even people who live and work far north of that, people whose jobs involve manufacturing, and many manufacturing jobs are being threatened and compromised as a result of the clogging at the border points of entry occurring as a result of these uncontrolled waves of illegal immigration.
Well, that said, why won't President Trump and Nancy Pelosi sit down to have an adult conversation about immigration reform?
And Chuck Schumer can come too.
Yeah.
I suspect that something like that is likely to happen sometime soon. I can't speak for the president or for Chuck or Nancy for that matter, but I suspect something like that may be coming.
In a letter to Attorney General Barr, your colleague Chuck Grassley from Iowa writes, among other things, in the course of our oversight work, we've reviewed certain text messages that may show potential attempts by the FBI to conduct surveillance of President-elect Trump's transition team. And then he goes on to offer an example of text between Strzok and Page. Where does this investigation go, investigation into everything that transpired in 2016, and how much will it be influenced on what's yet to come, both the Huber report on the FBI as well as Horowitz's report on the FBI?
Well, I think what we're seeing is an investigation that will have several different fronts, and they'll be proceeding simultaneously. It's difficult to say exactly where they will go, but there does seem to be some very disturbing evidence out there, some very disturbing indications that people within the so-called deep state really did their best to try to undermine the legitimacy of the outcome of the 2016 election. That should be troubling to all of us, because in a society that fancies itself as and is established as a republic, our elections need to mean something. The fact that we've got people within our own government sworn to serve and protect us trying to undermine that, the mere possibility of that is frightening, and we've got to address it meaningfully.
I wanted to let you address your book, Our Lost Declaration, America's Fight Against Tyranny from King George to the Deep State. How are we doing in that fight against tyranny these days?
Well, tyranny is a funny thing. It doesn't just go away, nor does it disappear when we get rid of a king and we adopt a Republican form of government. I wrote this book because so many people in America today, especially young people, seem to lack a basic understanding of how this country was founded and the principles upon which it was founded. I had in mind writing a book for parents and grandparents that they could get for their children and grandchildren so that they can understand just how long we've fought against tyranny in its many forms, and to help them recognize what tyranny is, and the fact that we have in the form of the deep state and the administrative federal bureaucracy today something that really does threaten liberty. It doesn't take the same form as a king. It doesn't sit on a throne or wear a crown. That in some ways makes it more dangerous because it makes it more stealthy. But we still have to address it. To address it, we have to first understand what liberty is, what rights are. And reading Our Lost Declaration will help people understand that.
Do you fear that the debate is wrong, capitalism versus socialism, and in that debate we lose an understanding, as you say, people have lost the sense of our history, lose an understanding that our rights, as enshrined in the Constitution, do not come from government, they come from God, and thus the need for restraint on government. And if we don't continue to educate successive generations that important point, then we will succumb to tyranny.
No, we exactly will. Remember, we had a revolution about the same time the French had a revolution. Ours stuck. Theirs didn't. And what I mean by stuck, ours built a thriving society. It fostered the development of the greatest civilization the world has ever known. The French Revolution was violence that begat more violence. One of the key differentiators between our revolution and theirs was that in ours, we didn't take God out of the equation. We factored him into it. We acknowledged that our rights come not from government, but from God. And it's that very understanding that helps us balance these competing these competing forces, these competing drives for liberty and equality. Those two can keep each other in check as long as we understand that our rights come from God and are not granted by government as an act of benevolence on behalf of any king, potentate, or bureaucracy. That's what we've got to remember, and that's one of the points I make in this book.
The book is Our Lost Declaration. He is Utah Senator Mike Lee. Senator Lee, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck with the book.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com.